Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mats House. And my name is Nicola Figatravanca. I will be moderating this afternoon's event. Before we start, I want to acknowledge the fact that there are many people who have worked very hard to make this event happen. And in particular, in addition to Logistical Justice, we have a great number of co-sponsors that have been working side by side with us to make this particular event happen. There is quite too many to read out. You've seen them on the Eventbrite page. What I would ask you to do as a co-sponsor, if you can just stand up for 1 second and wave to everybody. Attila, Graf, Pam, Melinda. Very good. So, thank you very much. Secondly, we have a special guest today. This is Rohingyas right by, and we'll hear from them. But we're also very honored to have two very special guests, one of whom has agreed to introduce the session. His name is Stephen Rapp. He's no stranger to the accountability fight. And he is now with the Holocaust Museum. He was some time ago, before the current administration, in the US State Department in charge of accountability for war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide. Stephen has joined us from Geneva, where he is involved in ongoing discussions on humanitarian law, and he's going back to Geneva on a flight in a couple of hours. So he's come to join us, and I hope nobody minds if we've moved the program around so that he can give the introduction to this event. Stephen, you have the floor.
It's a great honor to be here with all of you and with the victims and survivors of the genocide that was committed and is ongoing in its commission in Myanmar. This is the right of reply of the Rohingya people and of those victims. Of course, their cause is being ably carried in the International Court of Justice by the Gambia under the leadership of a great friend of mine, former colleague of mine when I was a prosecutor at the Rwanda Tribunal, Abubakar Tamadou. And we'll hear that response tomorrow. But today we need to hear from the Rohingya themselves. As you heard, I now am at the U.S. Holocaust Museum and its Center of Prevention of Genocide. In 2017, based upon its work in the field together with the group Fortify Rights, it issued a report on the horrendous crimes of August and September of 2017. And just a year ago this month, the U.S. Holocaust Museum issued a formal public declaration finding that there was compelling evidence that genocide had been committed against the Rohingya by agents of the state of Myanmar. Of course, we're going to hear some of that compelling evidence today. Now, I have seen a quotation from a government minister of Myanmar that said, well, this is just a case of he said, she said. It's much more than that. The evidence of the victims and survivors, most of them in these challenging environments of the camps in Bangladesh, has been verified by Physicians for Human Rights, which board I sit, through the protocols on sexual violence and torture, verifying the stories by the very injuries and the effect of these injuries on the victims. And even beyond that, it's so incredible for people like Aung San Suu Kyi to say that somehow this didn't happen, or it was just an overreaction, when the UN's own satellite agency, using commercial satellites, has found evidence of 392 villages holier destroyed during this relatively short period of time in 2017, and 3,700 structures destroyed. More than compelling evidence in this case. Now, people ask those of us at the Holocaust Museum, which are obviously talking about a horrendous crime that happened 75 years ago, why do we get involved in issues like this? And of course, it's part of trying to fulfill that hope, certainly a hope that hasn't been fulfilled in the post-war era of never again. But it's also because we see such echoes of the Holocaust in what happened in Myanmar. We see echoes of what happened in Rwanda, where I prosecuted those responsible for the hate media and later became chief of prosecutions in charge of all of those cases. We see it in this whole kind of worldview, that a whole people are not entitled to be part of the life of the nation. We see it in this hateful media, which now, of course, has this added dimension of the social media through Facebook, which there are more than half the population of Myanmar subscribers, with false pictures and false narratives presenting the Rohingya as a threat to the people of Myanmar, and to Buddhists and to others. And sadly, we hear the echoes of the rhetoric, even in the words of General Min Aung Hlaing, when he talks of finally solving this problem, echoing the words of the final solution. I know we heard this morning from my friend Bill Shavis. I will say to him, I was just with him 10 days ago, I prosecuted genocide. We've obtained convictions for this crime. He's wrong about the law. This was a genocide. He frankly doesn't think that Srebrenica was, and it was found by the courts. In fact, my friend Nick Kunjan, who worked with me on the Charles Taylor case in President of Liberia, whom we convicted at the Special Court for Sierra Leone, and who you may know is now head of the independent investigative mechanism for Myanmar, won a conviction in the Cambodia court for the genocide of the Cham, a Muslim group, a relatively small group in the larger crime against humanity in Cambodia during 1975 to 1979. And finally, given all of the hateful rhetoric, given all of this exclusion, given all of the violence, those circumstances, which we certainly have seen throughout since Aung San Suu Kyi has been freed, which we saw in Sitwe when the whole village was burned and people were moved into squalid camps, and we were told to wait and see, and there would be accountability and there would be change. We've seen that there's a threat of genocide and a failure to prevent it. So even if somehow this court doesn't find that there's a failure to punish the genocide that's happened, there has been an indubitable failure, an undoubted failure to prevent that crime. It's profoundly disappointing in arguments that began on the anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to have someone like Aung San Suu Kyi present these arguments. Remembering that she is for most of us, in the same class of her fellow Nobel Prize winner, Nelson Mandela. Someone who took office and then reached out to all of the ethnic groups and the racial groups, despite division, despite hatred, the Indian community, the African community, the white Afrikaners community, to bring everybody together, to make everyone welcome in that society, not to exclude them based upon what they think was the problem in the 40s or whenever, and then not fight, to continue to fight to stay in power, to hold power briefly, to set the nation on the right path and to yield to others. But these are questions that will be dealt with in this court and also in the courts of Argentina, and also at least as to forced deportation in the ICC. And I'm confident in other courts where we'll win declarations that this is a genocide and then eventually begin to convict the people responsible for it. But this is an enormous beginning, and I'm so proud to be with people with whom I worked before. Wayne New is on our Holocaust Museum Justice Advisory Group on trying to build victim-centered justice, and this is just such an example of it here today. So thrilled to be here. We talk about Nelson Mandela and finding truth, and to have truth, we need journalists, many of whom are here. I'm in forums tonight and tomorrow on the protection of journalists, and I think of those Reuters journalists who reported on the murder of 10 innocent young men, and then for that faced these trumped up charges for which Aung San Suu Kyi refused to release them from prison, even despite all the abundant evidence. So it's so important to protect that right to truth, and to hear that truth, and to see it presented, and I'm confident that that's what this proceeding will be about. So thank you for being here, and let's hear from this right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Before we start with our panelists, I thought it'd be useful to let you know that we are live on Facebook, which is not by accident, and thanks to Deutsche Welle Bengali. And if you want to inform people as we speak that the panel is going on, it's facebook.com DW Bengali, Deutsche Welle Bengali. And we're using a hashtag which is simply Rohingya reply, if you want to use it in your commentary on social media. And now finally the awaited moment. We have 5 extraordinary panelists, many of whom, all of whom, are well known within the Rohingya peaceful response to the genocide. So we'll ask them for today, having heard the Gambia yesterday, having heard Myanmar, Rohingya themselves at this stage of the proceedings don't have a say inside the ICJ. And this is the time that we hope you'll be able to reply to the arguments put forward by State Council and the others in her team for Myanmar. I would ask you to make a brief statement. I'll come back to you with questions. So initially a brief statement, also to tell a little bit the people in the room and the people who are watching us live what your thoughts on today's proceedings. What does the court case mean to you? And I will start with Razia Sultan, who needs very little introduction. She's a lawyer herself, and she has been one of those that has been most active in documenting crimes of sexual violence committed against the Rohingya, interacting with dozens, hundreds of direct victims of sexual violence committed in the course of the genocidal military action. So, Razia, it's for you, and it's your reply to Myanmar.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and it's a history of Rohingya, not only Rohingya, in the Myanmar, for especially the sufferer one. We have just come from this court. The way they say, it's like it's their habit, the liar. All are packed. It's nicely telling the lies just like it's true. And I'm just surprising how still they don't have fear. What they did, and they are not accepting this one. It's not hiding. It is shown by everyone. We don't have to collect evidence or anything. It's shown. And anyone can go in Cox's Bazar, the biggest Rohingya camp in Bangladesh, in the world. And they take in shelter in the Bangladesh. These people always say they, especially the maximum people, they don't know what is ICC, what is ICJ. But after the influx, when we just activists, we are saying this is a genocide and we want to be justice. The justice then we used to about the ICC, then ICJ. Just before when I come back from the camp, the woman, she gave me one scarf and she told me when you go inside in the hearing room, you should wear this one. And one thing she told me, can we go? And she lost her son, her daughter-in-law in front, he saw the whole family is dead, and she said, can we go? Justice is for Rohingya, it's just like give a punishment, no. Justice to go back to their own land. And every day I'm suffering, and I'm listening that every moment they're asking for their dignity. We need to go, but we need our right. Everyone knows, this is now 71 years, the human rights. Human rights. Did you see anybody, anything about the human rights? I did. For me, from after maybe 2016-17, I just frustrated about when you use the human right. There is no human right. Because we people are not promoting this human right. We are just showing our picture or anything in the Facebook or media, and we are just blink our eye. We are just supporting the media, and we don't want to know the truth. What actually going inside? It's not only for the Rohingya. It's all over the world. What are happening? Why we are quiet? We don't have to be quiet. We have to raise our voice. We have raised our voice, that's why in the 2 years we are in the ICJ. It is not for them or no any evidence, for the people among you. You are the one, you are the power. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Razia, for that testimony. Wei Wei, your name was mentioned by Ambassador Rapp as being on the board of the Holocaust Museum. Wei Wei is a human rights activist from the Rohingya community. What were your thoughts listening to the Gambia first and then today the Myanmar response?
First of all, thanks to Gambia and all of you and everybody who take this initiative and support it in this case, and all of us, the Rohingya. So this is a moment that many Rohingya have been waiting for so long. My response, and I would like to mix it, my response and my feeling. I would say that this is too painful for me to watch. At the same time, I'm very hopeful. It is painful to watch that the leader who we looked up to for a long time, who we regard as our role models, who we thought would bring democracy and equal rights of all people in Burma, is now defending the perpetrators of genocide. It is so painful to see how she has betrayed the principles of democracy, the human rights, and the suffering of the people. It is so painful to watch that she undermined the atrocities, the violence, and the suffering of the people. I would never imagine someone like her, a Nobel laureate, would do this thing. At the same time, I'm very hopeful that this will lead to real justice processes for the victims and survivors. They're all Rohingyas and all other people in the country who have been suffering for so long under military regimes and continuously now under the democracy and democratic government. So and I'm also very kind of, I wouldn't say excited, but we are very fortunate to see this process because of your support and all of your efforts. I'm very fortunate to experience that in our lifetime. We are experiencing that our suffering has been discussed and has been brought up to the court, and we have a chance to listen all together. So, and at the same time to experience, what is look like to have a free and fair trial, to be in a free and fair trial. As someone who was arrested and locked up for many years under the military regime because of who we are as Rohingya, also because of the political activism of my father, who was at some point allied to Aung San Suu Kyi in her political movement in our democracy movement in Burma. My father was one of the 18 members of her ethnic political allies in the democracy movement. So because of that, our family was arrested and afterly sentenced to 17 years, and my father was sentenced to 47 years. Luckily, we were released after 7 years. But someone who is a victim of this unfair trial and very corrupt political judicial system in the country, to experience that how the free and fair trial could be look like, to see that, to experience this is I feel very fortunate and very, very hopeful. So that's. But if I may reply, some statement that the statement that Aung San Suu Kyi, the state councillor and foreign minister of the country, has made today, I would say the statement is actually far from the reality. It's all her points are very different from the reality. First of all, I would say the criminal justice system. She said the military has been conducting investigations and prosecuting the perpetrators. I would say, based on our experience, our judicial system is the weakest. Judicial sector is the weakest sector institution in the country, let alone for the genocidal crimes, even for the ordinary crimes. The justice is really the justice processes is very, very weak, and we cannot, at the same time, we cannot expect the perpetrators to prosecute for themselves. So that's very important. It is very obvious that the domestic mechanism will not bring justice for the victims. There was, as she mentioned in her statement, yes, when the media and investigative institutions and people discover some of this crime, there was a court process for this Indian specific village. 4 of the soldiers were sentenced, and now they were released before their punishment. So, but at the same time, we actually cannot, as I said, cannot expect the perpetrators to prosecute for themselves. What we want to see is actually not the individual soldiers from the ground put in the jail, but what we want to hold accountable is the leaders and the leaders who have actually imposed and introduced the policies of persecutions and practices that has to be held accountable. So I think the last point that I would like to say is that she mentions about the educations and closing camps and all these development that she would describe in the country that her government has taken. In reality, those are not actually true. So, since 2012, about 150,000 Rohingya were displaced and they are still living in under confinement in Sidwe. The students, not just that, but the Rohingya, other part of the country, they are living like in the open prison, and the students from 2012 until today, the university students and those who have finished their matriculations, they're not still able to go back to the University of Sidwe, which is the only university in Rakhine State. What they have introduced in the last since 2 years ago is that the distant education system for some selected Rohingya students. First of all, the distant education system is very limited education. At the same time, it's actually imposing, legalizing the discriminatory practices and creating the apartheid-like conditions in education. At the same time, for the camps, she said they have closed 3 camps, and those are actually very small villages, the small camps that she has closed, and they are for the camps of the command minority. And actually, it's not like camp. It's closing camp. That's true, but it's not like really return of the people. What our people are expecting is to return to the places of their origin, their villages, not actually building the permanent infrastructures like camps-like conditions which segregate them from the Rakhine community. So this is what they have claimed to do is very small number. The majority of the populations are still under confinement. But to conclude, what I would just say is, everybody knows that in reality, nothing has changed, and the genocidal practices and policies and attitudes are continuing. And the reality is much more different than what they've been claiming at the international fora. Thank you.
Thank you. I am pleased to introduce also Dr. COMMENT. You had the privilege of education, but unfortunately not within the confines of Myanmar. Dr. Mint is representing the Arakan Rohingya National Organization based out of Sydney.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, respected dignitaries and your excellencies, on behalf of the Rohingya community, we would like to express our solidarity with the United People's Republic of Bangladesh, Gambia, Canada, Netherlands, and our Organization of Islamic Cooperations, and thanks them generously for the support of our people. This is because they are supporting us in our hardest day of our life. As you know, the Rohingyas are the most persecuted people in the world, and We call upon the international community to look for the mechanism which can provide justice in addition to help solving the issues that Rohingyas are experiencing with regard to voluntary, safe, dignified and sustainable return to our ancestral homeland in Burma. Yesterday, Gambia, the Republic of Gambia has taken decisive actions in leading the international community, in reminding the state parties that their obligation to uphold the convention to prevent and punish genocide is not just a political convenience, but it's also a moral duty for every state members in the world. Therefore, it is very, and they're doing it in an important time when we are in need of their help. And we're not the only group in the world who are at the vulnerable situation, such as genocide. There are also other ethnic groups in Burma as well as all across the world who are facing the situation that we are in at this stage. In addition to that, I have read the statement of Aung San Suu Kyi, and she has made 37 points. Out of that, I just want to point 3-4 points. If you serialize her statement, in number 4, she said the case that has been brought by Gambia doesn't have any merit. She's absolutely wrong, because it does have merit. The Gambian case has been supported by all international fact-finding mission researchers and all the global thinkers. And on number 24, she said that this is an internal affair. We absolutely don't accept that, because genocides and mass atrocity crimes are never ever internal affairs, because they use these internal affairs under the pretext of severity. So severity is not a license to commit genocide and mass atrocity crimes. When genocides and mass atrocity crimes are happening, then it's the business of every other person in the world to stop it, because it's the moral duty. Because we don't want to have a situation like Rwanda, Srebrenica, and elsewhere like Holocaust. And that's why in 2001, Kofi Annan has formed a commission with the support of the Canadian government, ICIS, with the initiative of the former Australian Foreign Minister Gareth Evans. They came out with an idea of responsibility to protect. Responsibility to protect is a protocol that helps stop this kind of mass atrocity crimes. It may not be very promising appealing to the world at this stage, given the current situation in Syria or elsewhere in the world, because the Security Council is deadlocked. But that doesn't mean it's not going to stop. So anyway, bottom line is that we have whatever out of all those substances or the particular points that been made by Aung San Suu Kyi is nothing but I don't think that she's speaking to the court. I think she's speaking to the audience in her country just to garner support for her forthcoming election. She thinks democracy is always about winning election and completely ignoring the human rights of minorities. Unfortunately, that's not the case. There's a strong provost made by the former President Barack Obama in Cairo at the Cairo University in 2009. He stressed that there are some people in the world who's once out of the power, they always try to seek and promote the value of democracy. However, when they're in power, they are as ruthless as their oppressor, and they also tend to prosecute the minorities as their previous oppressor. Unfortunately, that's the case in Burma for the Rohingya situation. And thank you very much for giving the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Clement. I would now like to give the floor to Yasmin Ullah. Yasmin is a human rights activist from the Rohingya Human Rights Network in Canada, and a well-versed, very well-heard human rights advocate around the world. Yasmin, your reaction to the statements by Myanmar, by Burma today, and your feelings and reaction to the case as a whole.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, No Peace Without Justice, and all the allies that have made all of these events actually possible. Very, very short, notice. I'm pretty sure you guys have just pulled this off. really quickly. So props to you guys. I am so overwhelmed by the interest. This was such a stark contrast to when I first started. It was like no one wanted to hear what I had to say, or the fact that back in 2017, before August 25th, I was just contacting my family back home in Rakhine State, and we already knew what was coming because some of our male relatives would have to go and hide in the jungle at night, and because the houses would be raided at night, and the military would come and arbitrarily arrest some of our relatives. At that time, it seemed that there was a little bit of inaction and not as much of a willingness to listen. But I'm very grateful that this has come to the forefront, although it took a mass atrocity, a massive number of people that had to flee from their own homes, and so many lives that were lost. Most of those are our loved ones. My reaction to today's hearing was that I sort of expected, something similar to what was said today. I'm not going to lie that I prepared myself for the lies, for the undermining and the whitewashing of genocide that would take place. But what was striking was the fact that there is this audacity to actually talk about, the fact that there is a reformation within the Rakhine State that's taking place, of any kind. And this is coming from a person who still have very deep connection in Rakhine State. And I can't tell you where exactly my families are from because they're going to be at risk of, various different kind of persecution. The fact that my family's, not too far from my own, birthplace, the entire village was burned down, and so many displaced people came to our town to seek refuge. And we opened our arms, although we had to flee at first and then come back, because that's what they chose, to stay inside the country, although the country didn't want them. It's so different. It's just completely different from what was said today. And the fact that, Aung San Suu Kyi said something like, oh, we have, mechanisms, we're reforming, we're trying to, rehabilitate the situation. There's nothing. These people who came to seek refuge in our village, decided to go back, and they started to rebuild those infrastructure. And what was said to them was basically, tear this down, or we will take you and arrest you and put you in the concentration camp. Those were the threats that were made to them. So it is such a stark difference between what was said today and what actually happened on the ground. Not only that, they completely dismiss the fact that sexual violence and gender-based violence took place. At this very moment, my sisters at the camps have to take care of children that were born out of mass rape. Excuse me if I'm not so positive about how the country's changing and repatriation can take place, and all those memorandum of agenda that had happened in secret that the UN supported, or so they said. How do you even begin to address those things? That these women are now being isolated from their families. And they're being shamed, they're being guilted for the crimes they have not committed or took part in. It was done to them. Their dignity was hurt, their dignity was destroyed. And so did our sense of community. This is the definition of what genocidal rape is. They completely dismissed that. Didn't even bring that up. My apologies, I'm a little bit emotional. The fact that they also talked about a lot of different things that that pertain to the fact that 10,000 lives that were lost or 1,000 lives that were lost was not enough to constitute genocide. How many lives is it that is going to be enough? Million? Do they need to kill us all? Is that enough? Let me remind them again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I have no legal knowledge. But the Convention of Prevention of Genocide was there, was ratified, was created to protect groups of people, to protect minorities, to protect humanity from falling into genocide again. This is a prevention, not just punishment of genocide. I just don't want any more lives to be lost. We've lost enough. And the fact that the military and Myanmar institutions of various kinds have been able to walk away with total impunity is just too much to bear. My hope, just as I put in my op-ed that was published yesterday in the foreword, is that, we're not here to seek vengeance. We're not here to retaliate against the Myanmar as an institution, as a country, or the military itself that has done this to us, that has taken so much from us, and that so many of us have lost many of our loved ones and many things that we cherish. It is the fact that we don't want this to ever have to happen to anyone else. Our Karen brothers and sisters, our Kachin brothers and sisters, our Shan brothers and sisters, our Arakan brothers and sisters, whoever else in the country that are currently suffering at the hands of the government and the military. This needs to stop. And that's why this case is important. We get to reclaim our humanity. And I hope that you feel the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. Last but not least, I'm pleased to give the floor to Tung Kin, well-known Rohingya human rights leader from the Burma Rohingya organization in the UK. Tung Kin, you have the floor.
First of all, I would like to express many thanks to the organizers. I would like to express thanks to Gambia, Canada, Netherlands, Bangladesh, and other countries who are supporting, other OIC countries who are supporting on this issue. This week, historic week for Rohingyas and other minorities in Burma. The first time we have seen Burma, a case where we've been waiting for many decades is brought to International Court of Justice. And for the survivors, I've been visited many times to the camps. One word I heard from them is, we want justice, very unitedly. Bisa, Ara bisa side. This is what Rohingya learned. That's not the nation. So, this is a day, yesterday, we have seen what's happened to them. We heard, we advocate many governments. Finally, only Gambia, the little country, brave enough to take this. And we advocated many countries, but what happened is finally brought to case. And Burmese government, Aung San Suu Kyi, she dismissed. She believes it's not happened. But yesterday, 3 hours, she was able to listen. Unfortunately, it's not surprising for anyone here in this room. She's denial. And she did not use even our identity today when she was talking. And she is coming up that is a kind of communal, and it's a kind of arsat issues, and a kind of different ways of, intercommunal issue. I remember one day she told me in 2015 in Burma Campaign UK office, when we have a phone call, when someone introduced me as a Rohingya, she said, when democracy comes, all these basic fundamental rights will be fine in the country. And she's saying that, British colonial era and these things. Let me bring you one picture here. Here, my grandfather with her father in 1946, for the meeting invited for, constitutional committee member, my grandfather was invited with her father here in 1946. We have contributed to our country from the foundation of the Burma. She's saying it's about intercommunal, it's about conflict and other way. It's totally unacceptable. We've been waiting for so long. We are hearing this thing for so long. Finally, it is good that we have seen another way Burmese government have to defend at the court. No matter what they say, they have to defend International Court of Justice today. And she dismissed blanket impunity. She dismissed everything. And she dismissing the most horrific crimes, what we have faced in our time, she is dismissing this year. I remember when I spent 1 month in Bangladesh, our brothers and sisters, what they told me. Even in one village, one Retedong, one village, one woman was, military, she saw military entering her village, and in front of her 8 years boy was knifed to death, and she was raped by militaries, and her husband was slaughtered in front of her, and finally she was able to manage to run away, and she went to the camps. There are many similar stories we have. And we have a lot of many credible fact-finding mission reports have already revealed everything. So my point here is, no matter what, we are feeling is such a great moment for the Rohingyas and other minorities for Burma. It is one first thing is Burmese government is facing international court for what they are committing, the crimes against humanity and genocide. And secondly, this, no matter what happened in this at the court, one thing is Rohingya have 600,000 Rohingya lives are at risk in Burma. This is very important that I believe international communities, even the court, have to ask for the provisional measures. That is very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tumkin. We've heard directly from some of the representatives of the Rohingya community in their rights of reply. And Tumkin, you mentioned there is a number of other countries that have been at your side. I'm very pleased that we have the honor of having His Excellency Mr. Masood bin Momen, the Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Dhaka, who has joined us today, and I would ask him to come up to the podium and give us his brief remarks.
First of all, let me thank No Peace Without Justice for arranging this right to reply of the Rohingyas while we are having this court hearing at the ICJ. Distinguished colleagues, dear friends from the media and the civil society and the academia. First of all, also let me express my colleagues and myself gratitude and tribute to the Rohingya representatives present here for their courage and also for the resilience, especially of the lady representing the Rohingya community. We have all been working for the last few years, and I think this is a historic occasion that is being witnessed here in The Hague. This is not about retaliation, as mentioned by Yasmin. This is not about revenge, but this is about justice, not only for the Rohingyas, but for all the victims all around the world, so that this is a kind of rare opportunity for all of us to make right the wrongs that have happened, and also to ensure never again. This has happened in the past, as we all know. Unfortunately, our legal system and the international community's various inadequacies had somewhat failed humanity, despite the fact that we had this convention to prevent genocide. It's an unfortunate event, definitely. I don't want to go into the right of reply mode as the legal team is, as we speak, preparing the rebuttal of the submission of Myanmar. But I would like to echo two points that was mentioned, which has been bothering me, is the fact that during the submission of the whole team, and particularly the agent herself, they did not, or deliberately did not use the word Rohingya, because that will have some implications about targeting a group. They just mentioned Muslims, but we always, in the UN, before joining in the ministry, I was a permanent representative for Bangladesh to the UN in New York, and in all our statements and in my personal interactions with other peers, we mentioned that this is a distinct ethnic group and with their distinct culture. It so happened that they have a different religion, which is Islam, but they just painted them in the light of a religious group. And the other point is, we all know the kinds of atrocities that were committed, especially the sexual violence perpetrated, and rape was used as a kind of a genocidal tool against these innocent women, and many of them being children and young girls. And during the agent's presentation, although there were other submissions like collateral damage, or during the air raids, they could not be distinctions between combatants and non-combatants, but the point of sexual abuse and exploitation and atrocities was also carefully avoided. I think that is serious insult to not only all the Rohingya women, but also to all the women of the world. During my tenure in New York, I tried to raise this issue as much as possible to keep it in the international arena. And in that effort, I must acknowledge that we got a lot of support from the civil society organizations, from academia, from the NGOs, and in fact sometimes they were more helpful than some of the intergovernmental processes which are often handicapped by geopolitical realities of the world. In fact, it is common knowledge that we failed to get a single Security Council resolution out. All we could get is a presidential statement. Of course, that did not deter us from moving in the General Assembly through the third committee and also the Human Rights Council. But there also we faced a lot of difficulties. Today, one of the lawyers from the Myanmar team mentioned that why genocide word was not used in the Human Rights Council resolution or the third committee resolution. So obviously, there are political reasons behind that. But our hope is that whatever is the outcome of this hearing at the ICJ, that the civil society, the human rights activists, the academia, the researchers, they will keep on fighting for the rights of the Rohingyas and for justice. This is just one forum here at the ICJ. There are several fronts in ICC and various international independent mechanisms, and under Human Rights Council and under the General Assembly. So your efforts would always bolster such other initiatives, and we hope that that the Rohingyas' rights will be re-established. And as Bangladesh is hosting currently more than 1.1 million of the Rohingyas, and we would also work while we see the importance of the establishment of justice, but this will also be a confidence-building measure for the Rohingyas in the camp for their dignified return in security, safety, to pursue their sustainable livelihood. Because most of the Rohingyas in the camps, they do want to go back, but they don't want to go back in a situation of insecurity and indignity. So therefore, justice dispensation is very important in this context, not only as a kind of an international moral obligation, but also as a confidence-building measure for the repatriation to occur. And we are stuck. We tried twice, but we didn't find a single Rohingya family to return, and that is understandable unless Myanmar ensures more conducive atmosphere or condition in the Rakhine state. I don't think it would be possible for their voluntary return. So I thank you, and I again thank all the Rohingya representatives present here, and all the others who have suffered. Hopefully ICJ will rise to the occasion and do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I see that we were joined by Honorable Bob Reid from Canada, whom I would ask to come to the front in preparation of surprising him. Thank you for joining us. Anyway. So we will ambush you further later. In the meanwhile, we've heard of the Rohingya genocide, and we've heard of the attempts to divide the various Burmese communities. I see also the Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh has joined us, so welcome. I was saying we've heard of attempts to divide the various communities. I'm very pleased to see here Mayra Dagepo. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your surname, from the U.S. Campaign for Burma. And I would ask you to come and say a few words from the perspective of a non-Rohingya.
Thank you so much. So, what the world witnessed in this gross violation is the pattern of crimes that Burma Army commits against the Burma ethnic minorities pretty much across the whole country, including my ethnic group, which is the Karen. So when we talk about mass atrocities in Burma, war crimes and crimes against humanity, all of the ethnic minorities have to endure at the hands of the Burmese military. But I do not mean to take away from the experience of my Rohingya brothers and sisters and the level of violence of the Burma Army imposed on them. But I wanted to say that the intensity of different violence that goes on with the ethnic minority is different, vary due to whatever they wanted from that ethnic group or which part of the country. So that is the difference. And therefore, I'm saying I myself was one of the survivors. I was born as an internally displaced person, grew up as a refugee in mid-90s, and then later on became an undocumented person or a stateless person in Thailand until I resettled to the US. And I lost many of my family members due to the Burmese military's brutality as well. So part of the reason is that this is the pattern that has been continuing, that has been persisted because of the systemic culture of impunity in Burma, where a lot of vulnerable community members from different ethnic groups are unable to hold their perpetrators accountable. So today, many of you who listened to the hearing, I'm pretty sure you heard about the state councillor said that what's happening in Arakan state is an armed conflict. And this is about the crimes that many may have committed as part of the conflict. She said that. So well, as a Karen, I know very well because we have gone through that for more than 7 decades. So the perpetrators, the Tamador, has been committed this crime, and the very sad thing is that in response is that their response is never proportionate, but always characterized by mass human rights abuses and always with impunity. And that is something that I think it's very worthwhile that we have to note about. And this is because the Burma Army is above the law. You also heard about the state councillor said today in her statement, paragraph 28, if war crimes have been committed by members of Myanmar's defense services, they will be prosecuted through our military justice system in accordance with Myanmar's constitution. I'm not sure how many of you would believe that. Sorry. And then she has gone on record exalting the rule of law. I'm pretty sure you heard enough times because I do. In her country for years. However, that does not seem to be the case. The case is actually the Burmese military is above the law. So this case, we're talking about the ICJ case that we've heard about today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, is a real opportunity and the chance, not just for our Rohingya friends or community, but for the people of Burma, especially the ethnic minorities who have to endure human rights abuses and atrocities under the Burmese military for all these decades. And that is why I'm saying this hearing is very important, and I'm very grateful to everyone who has been a part of this hearing. Thank you so much. You take us a step further, and we still have a lot more to do. I just hope that this international case will be a leverage towards applying some pressure on Burmese government, especially the military as well as NLD right now. And I'm hoping that they're thinking about accountability and probably bring themselves a step closer to justice for the people who are suffering for all these years. And to the international community, I wanted to say that it is very important that you continue supporting Burma. And I also, but you also have to realize that the culture of this impunity is what has allowed these atrocities to happen, and this impunity has to be dismantled. And we cannot do this without your support. Of course, international justice is not, I guess everyone is calling for. It is slow, it is costly, and we're not really sure how the turnout is going to be. And so perhaps the best or the better option would be domestic accountability. But to do that, we need a free and fair and a partial legal system in Burma. But it is something which we're lacking. We need the judge that would understand the situation of the people on the ground, or side with the people, the victims or the survivors. But that is what we're lacking in Burma. So until that day is realized, and until the people of the country are able to stand up and assert their rights, and have the government and the powerful people in their interest, the only avenue for justice and accountability for the Burmese people is the international community. So I hope that this case will be the starting point for conversation, for dialogue inside my country, so that the pressure from different countries can be meaningful. So whatever that happens, one thing for sure is that because of full accountability and justice in Burma must reflect the pattern of the crimes that have occurred for a long time against so many ethnic minorities. So the case on genocide of the Rohingya is the starting place, but much more needs to be done, and therefore, again, I'm reinstating that we need your help. So with that, I wanted to say that thank you so much for your attention, and I wish everything goes well and turns out for the best, and the genocide is stopped in Burma.
Thank Thank you very much, Madam. I have a few more people on my list, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity of asking Honorable Bob Bray to say a few words. He's been involved in this process for a little while. And the Gambia is not here in this room. The Gambia will have its right of reply tomorrow. We hosted them in a similar event on the 11th of November, on the date that deposited the complaint at the ICJ. But I think I can guess that they feel it's more prudent as they have to litigate in front of the court, not to appear to also be litigated in the court of public opinion. I understand if that is the erring on the side of caution, as they should. But I see now the Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh has also joined us. The Secretary of the Ministry has given us the Bangladeshi perspective, but maybe Honorable Ray, you want to say a few words?
Thank you very much. Thank you. I would just like to take this opportunity to reflect on this process that we are all part of. Because when you think about it, it really is quite extraordinary how the political world has changed in the face of tragedy and injustice. It used to be that governments would talk to governments and things would be communicated by diplomatic telegrams and niceties would be observed, and there would be speeches at the United Nations or the League of Nations or wherever, and everyone would go home to a cocktail party and go to bed. And that would be the end of the issue. But our world has been transformed by a couple of major and quite extraordinary developments. And the first is obviously the courage of the Rohingya people themselves. And the people who are here, all of whom I know. So when I was asked by Mr. Trudeau to be a special envoy, he thought, and I thought, it would be a pretty short mission. I was appointed in September of 2017. The Prime Minister had a difficult, I think I can reveal this, a difficult conversation with Aung San Suu Kyi. And he and I were meeting on another subject, and he said, "Do you know a little bit about Myanmar?" I said, "Well, I know a little bit. I was there a couple of years before, involved with an NGO that was working on the peace process. So I know a little bit. I've traveled in the country, but that's what I know." He said, "Well, I'd like you to go to the camps, find out what's going on." This was only a month after the events of August. And meet with Aung San Suu Kyi and then come and brief me before I meet with her again at the APEC meeting in Da Nang. So I went to the camps and stayed for 3 days in Cox's Bazar. And I don't mind saying to all of you and confessing to all of you that I was traumatized by what I heard. I was also struck, amazingly struck, by the courage of the people who told me some stories about what had happened to them. And think for a moment of 750,000 people. That's bigger than the population of The Hague. Think for a moment of them moving, traveling, getting by foot, many of them walking for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, famished, starved, arriving in a place and having nowhere to live, nothing, not knowing who your neighbor was, not knowing where you were with your family, not knowing where members of your family were. Just try and imagine the calamity that represented. And so for me, after I debriefed the Prime Minister and tried to describe to him what I had seen, he said, well, do you want to keep going? I said, I can't stop now. You can't just walk away and say, well, I'll write a report and say that was very interesting and moving and good luck to everybody. Goodbye. You can't say that. But the other reason I couldn't say goodbye is because the community wouldn't let me say goodbye. I was getting emails and phone calls and getting communication from many, many different people living in Canada, living all over North America, NGOs organizing, say, okay, Mr. Ray, what are you going to do now? Here's some new evidence. Here's other information we have. And understanding, for me, it was like embracing this whole world where we are all seekers of truth. It's not just the lawyers. I didn't love it, but the comment today that said, well, Young Lee, she's not even a lawyer. You sort of say, what? What are you saying? You have to be a lawyer to be able to sit down and listen to people's stories? You have to be a lawyer to understand injustice when you see it? You don't have to be a lawyer to do that. You have to be a human being. And so, to me, we are in the middle of a movement here, and who knows where it will stop, how it will go. Will the institutions respond in the right way? We don't know. Will we get justice in one place or another? We don't know. But what we do know is that something has started that can't be stopped. Because it has touched so many people. And yeah, it is about a very simple principle that no matter how important you are, no matter how powerful you are, the law is always above you. And for whatever you do, you are going to be held accountable. Whenever it is, however long it takes. There is no escape from accountability. But more than just accountability, we have to find political solutions. We have to find the solutions that will allow for people to live in security. So I won't comment further on any of the arguments that have been made in court. I don't want to get myself into any further trouble than I'm already in every day. Except I want to say thank you to the fighters, thank you to the supporters, and say that the world of politics and diplomacy will never, ever, ever be the same. Too much has changed. And of course, the other thing that's changed is the media, the cell phones, the ability of people to tell their stories. And so it's so important for us to continue this process of communication, and of bearing witness, and of making sure as we bear witness that we also take action. Mr. Sands, who made a very important argument yesterday, ended up quoting Primo Levi. And Primo Levi, one of my favorite books of Primo Levi, who was a survivor of the Holocaust, is he quoted the famous words of the Rabbi Hillel. And the rabbi asked 3 questions. He said, if I am not for myself, then who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, then what am I? And if not now, when? Those questions have always stuck with me, and particularly now the last question. If not now, when? So we all have an obligation to stand together. Sometimes we attack each other a bit for saying not enough or saying too little or whatever it may be. We always get into internal arguments about this or that. None of that matters. What matters are some things that need to be said today. No matter the silence on this subject from any of the authorities in Myanmar, we are all Rohingya. Rohingya exist, and we are all Rohingya. And we should shout that word from the treetops. We should be shouting it everywhere, so everyone will hear it. A people who have a dignity and who have a life and have an identity, and it should never be taken away. And merely refusing to use the word can never be justification for someone else saying, oh, then if you won't use the word, I won't use the word either. We use the word, Rohingya. Let it be spoken. And as we speak it, let us recognize that there must be a home for everyone somewhere in the world. Somewhere in the world, there must be a home. There must be a place that people can say, this is my place. Let me just finish with this, because when I was doing my work, I said, what does the word Rohingya mean? And as I understand it, as I was told, it means I'm a person from Arakan. That's my home. That's why they don't want people to use the word, because it says we have a home. And our home is where we know it is. Our home is where we know our home to be. And it's so important for us to work together in a big cause, and to understand that what it is that unites us together is much more important than any of the things that might divide us. I'm not a Muslim. I don't consider this to be a Muslim issue, or an Asian issue, or an issue that divides people from one group or another. I consider this to be an issue of our common humanity. It's an issue that should define us as human beings. You all will know this story, but I'll tell it one more time. When I made my first visit to the camp, I spoke with one person for about an hour. I wanted to have a longer meeting with one person, and I had a chance to meet one person. And at the end of our conversation, where he described to me everything that had happened to him and to his family, what he had faced for years of discrimination, how he'd not been able to go to university, how he'd not been able to follow his profession, how he'd not been able to do what he had wanted to do. And at the end of this conversation, and he was extremely articulate and clear, and as I was coming up to him, close up, saying, I'm going to take a message to my Prime Minister, what do you want me to tell him? And he looked me right in the eye and he said, tell him that we are human. And that's what I realized.
Thank you, sir. I think you could not escape, for many, certainly for me, to think of the poetic confession. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Still not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I did not speak out. I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews. I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak out for me. Somebody who, inside Burma, as a Burmese, has been speaking out, is Professor Mamzarni. I'm very pleased to give him the floor for a few comments.
Thank you very much. My comment are solely directed at my fellow Burmese people that call themselves Rohingya. I came from a military family that have served in the armed forces that stands today, credibly accused of having commissioned the crime of genocide. Since this institution's inception in 1942, the year Suu Kyi wasn't even born then. And I didn't just simply come from a military family. I came from a military family that produced General Than Shwe's mentor. Than Shwe was one of the key figures in continuing Ne Win's genocidal policies. Also, another family member that on the 4th of July 1961, the American Independence Day, in a northern Rakhine town of Mount Dor, as deputy commander of Rakhine State, all Rakhine commands, called the Rohingya people, esteemed Rohingya people, village heads, teachers, other citizens. He was at the last surrender ceremony of separatist movement at the time known as Mujahideen. I have a letter, worn and yellowish in a digitized format, 58 years old, where he signed as Deputy Commander of All Rakhine Command, addressing Rohingya people, esteemed Rohingya people. There is no but or if or shades of grey about who Rohingyas are. And this is in the official documents of the Union of Burma, well into the early 1960s, when General Ne Win took power in 1962. So when Suu Kyi stood up today, refused to or chose not to even name the victims' officially recognized and self-identified ethnic identity, she was nothing but deceptive in the model of Joseph Goebbels. We have an extraordinary moment in history where Aung San Suu Kyi, once held as the icon of global human rights, liberalism, and democratization, behaved as if she were Joseph Goebbels, acting on behalf of the murderous Burmese military. I was, at the age of 16, a military academy admit. My uncle flew General Ne Win's plane for 25 years. So my country, wrong is wrong. I am a patriot. My patriotism calls for telling the society that they are committing heinous crime. So I say to all the Rohingya people in this room, in diaspora, and in the camps, inside Myanmar, wherever they may be, young, old, man, woman, I am sorry. It should count for something. I am giving this apology on behalf of all good Burmese. Finally, I approach this subject as a professional. I was trained at the University of Wisconsin for 8 years for my PhD by a former American military intelligence officer who interrogated SS officers and was at Nuremberg trial by the name of Robert Cale. Cale wrote the very first authoritative book on Himmler and SS. When I see signs of genocide, I can know that this is genocide. I was one of the early ones that called this the crime of genocide. But this is not about anybody who was first or who was earliest. The very first people that called this crime by its name is Rohingya people themselves, as early as 1978. If you read all the publications coming out of northern Arakan, Rohingya named the crime they suffer. They know. No one, no lawyer, no court of justice will have more authoritative experience than what the Rohingyas suffer. That's why Professor Philippe Sin in his East-West Street say, lawyers must not have the last word on the crime of genocide. Genocide is too profound and too important to be left in the court of justice or law. To my fellow Burmese who call themselves Rohingya, I say to you today, no matter what the ruling from the ICJ, ICC, any future ad hoc tribunal, in the world's moral public opinion, your crime is being recognized as nothing less than genocide. Finally, when William Shabazz said there are no mass graves, William Shabazz said limited policies of starvation is meant to drive the people out. He is categorically wrong and completely deceitful. Professor Amartya said in 2014, in November at Harvard, said, if you deny people opportunities for nutritional intake, if you deny people the right to farm, if you deny people to access streams and rivers for nutritional intake, there is only one objective. The objective is to slowly kill off. Raphael Lemkin called this type of thing racial feeding. Rohingyas are deprived of multiple sources of nutrition. That is why I think it is so crucial. The judicial process are not open to victim or public participation. What is important is for us as individual citizens, not lawyers, just humans, outside, on the street, at work, in schools, hospitals. We must do individual actions. That action involves shaming, naming, and shunning my country of Myanmar that likes to be known as Buddhist. We are calling on all good citizens who see all humans as a single family to boycott Myanmar. We have a campaign that we launched on the 9th of December, International Genocide Day. BoycottMyanmar.org. Come and join hands with us, no matter where you are, no matter who you are. Finally, we must salute the will on the part of the Rohingya people, the will to live. That will is so strong. We must join in their struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Just before we continue, I want to remind you that we are live on Facebook, thanks to Deutsche Welle Bengali, so facebook.com/DW Bengali. Also, everybody who is intervening, whether for government or for themselves, I just want to emphasize this also in respect of our panelists. Everybody is speaking in their own individual capacity, obviously, representing their own views. And nothing that anybody else says should be attributed to anybody but themselves. Just to be clear. And with that, I'm pleased to give the floor to Lajo. Lajo is based in the Netherlands, actually. A native Dutch Rohingya, found locally. He is also the president of the European Rohingya Council, one of the major European organizations. Dr. Lajo, you have the floor.
First of all, I would like to thank you all thank you so much. Without your support, we could not bring Myanmar government into International Court of Justice. Therefore, on behalf of my community, we would like to express our gratitude with so many words we cannot express here. First of all, I want to start with my name. When I was young, we normally, traditionally, Rohingya give a Rohingya name to if a baby was born. But when I was young, I was given a Rohingya name. My name is Khubai, Rohingya name. And when I was grade 4, I saw the suffering of our people. Our people are denied health care. Our people cannot visit the hospital. So I wanted to be a doctor to treat our people, our villagers. So at grade 4, my brother changed my name into Burmese name, Lajo. Because when we were at school, we were discriminated. We were not given enough grade, even though we could answer all of the questions in exam paper. And finally, when I was studying, and finally, with the name, Burmese name, I am graduated as a trained medical doctor in Burma. But unfortunately, I could not fulfill my dream to treat my people, because in 2010, I had to flee the country for Netherlands. And after 5-6 years in Netherlands, I become Dutch citizen. And now I am chairman of the European Rohingya Council, campaigning for our people. So I am one of the organizers. I'm one of the organizers of Rohingya Solidarity Rally yesterday and today, and I have seen something unprecedented. Before, we also organized such events in the past. We were inviting our Karen brother, Kachin brother, Mon brother, Arakan brother, but it was very rare those brothers join us in the fight against Myanmar government. But in this event, we saw Karen brother, Kachin brother, even a group of Rakhine brothers join us today and show solidarity with us. This is very, very important. And I want to talk about two stories. One is what military has done during this genocidal campaign. It is about Khadija, my very close relative. She was very young, 20 years old. She had a son and her daughter, her husband. During this campaign, her husband was killed in front of her eyes. And her son was thrown into the fire in front of her eyes. She is now in the camp in Bangladesh. So every day, every moment, she is trying to die because she doesn't want to suffer, carry on this psychological effect, but she cannot die. Can you imagine? Every day she wants to die, but she cannot die. So, and second thing is the current situation inside Myanmar. My mother is still inside Myanmar. I know it is very risky for my mother to be because I'm campaigning here publicly, so it's very risky, but I have to do. And one of my niece is suffering gangrene. She needs an emergency surgical operation. She cannot go to the Bangladesh because of the situation at the border. If she go at the night, probably the Burmese Navy on the North River would shoot. And also she cannot go to another city, Sitwe or Yangon, for that treatment. Even the surgeon who is treating her is telling, I have never imagined this situation. You need to go to Yangon, you need to go to Sitwe to take this operation. This is the current situation there. How can you repatriate this nearly 1 million people to Myanmar? This is really impossible. And second, this is my mother. My mother has high blood pressure. She had to take regular medication for blood pressure. And one night, she was suffering very high blood pressure. She needs one nifedipine, sublingual nifedipine, to lower the blood pressure. But nifedipine is only available at the hospital at night. She was not allowed to go to the hospital. This is what's happening now. So how can you talk about repatriation? So that's why we really, we feel our Rohingya community all over the world, inside the camp, they are very happy because with the support of international community, with the support with Gambia's initiative, Canada has supported, Netherlands has issued a statement, and of course the support the work of activists and scholars and also journalists, and finally the case has been brought to International Court of Justice. We strongly believe, because it is the truth. We know, as Dr. Maungzani said, we are the one who have been going through this process, this genocidal suffering. So we know what we are suffering. This is genocide. So this is the truth. At the end of the day, we hope that truth will come out. No matter what Aung San Suu Kyi denied, or no matter what she defends the military, no matter what she covers, at the end of the day, truth will come out and justice will prevail. So for that, we need your continuous, momentous support, and also the continuous support for this case, and also continuous awareness. Without your support, we cannot succeed in this case. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lajo. I would like to open up for questions to our panel. I wonder, before I do that, whether you want to have a brief comment, or should we just open it up for the room? Brief comment now?
Open up.
Okay. Yes, please, introduce yourself. I will help you.
It's okay, sir. I can talk.
No, the live feed, you're live on Facebook, and it doesn't work without the microphone.
Thank you. And this is not a question to my fellows.
You want to introduce yourself?
I'm into the system? That's great.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Ray Simong. I'm with the Rohingya Human Rights Network in Canada. Yasmin is my colleague. And this is a question to my fellows, our counterparts from Bangladesh. Sir, from the Secretary of Ministry, and as well from our OIC counterparts, if there is anyone from the OIC. There is, okay, that's great. So first of all, to begin with, without underscoring anything that my mentor Gozarni mentioned, as a matter of fact, first of all, I should thank, as a Rohingya, and we should all give a round of applause for what Bangladesh has done to my people and continue to do to support my people. But in light of what was presented today, I just wanted to get your thoughts, sir. What do you think of the fact that they pointed out that 13 of the OIC member states are not signatories or are not members to the Genocide Convention, and the fact that Bangladesh has got reservations from Article 9 of the Convention? So that is question one. And the other question is, in light of the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed between Bangladesh and Myanmar for repatriation, the very fact that this Memorandum of Understanding is being utilized with UNHCR in its, as the intermediary, is being utilized to demonstrate that there isn't in fact a genocidal intent, because, wow, they're all so nice and benevolent that they're now trying to very decently accept us into the same concentration camps where we're being slaughtered. So, in light of that fact, what do you think is, what would be Bangladesh's position, or what do you think about these arguments that were made this morning, please?
We'll take a few more. And of course, today is the Rohingya right of reply. So I appreciate the question for our colleagues mostly to reply, but I appreciate the question, and I leave it free to the representative of Bangladesh whether they want to comment or not. It's more questions. Comments? All right, then I would, with the Ambassador's permission, I would give the floor to our colleagues, our Rohingya colleagues, for their comments on what transpired after the conventions and their take-home messages for all of us.
Thank you so much. Yes, justice process is starting. For me, is who is lose or who is win, it doesn't matter. But I know my community has to pay a big price, and they are now in the deadline. For justice, for maybe some of small piece, yes. Still, the justice exists in 2000 centuries. So I like to request everyone, you are holding our hand and we are now here. We need your support to be resolve the Rohingya issue. There are so many countries who are just avoid our matter about the investment. You can invest, but you cannot avoid the humanity. So stop business as usual with Myanmar, and don't believe the lady who are now trying to advise us that she's drawing Disney World in the Arakan state. But in the morning, what she said, he said so many things, but we didn't see anything. Just try to find the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. For me, a few things actually. No matter what happened from this, accountabilities issue, we are having now ICJ and Argentina case. What our Rohingya organization, Burmese Rohingya organization, UK filed it last on 13th of November, and we have International Criminal Court case. No matter how this case goes, this might take long. It is important that survivors, one thing I'm receiving from the camp, from the survivors and inside world, what will happen to us tomorrow, they never know. And what can happen. And how, when they can return to their original villages with dignity, with international protection and security, with their rights, what they've lost. So it is important that for this accountability measure, other countries have to come forward to support, like Canada, Netherlands, and many more countries need support to join. And secondly, we have to keep up momentum, the pressure to Burmese military and the government. We welcome, U.S. yesterday, the sanctioned militaries, and there is much more sanction need to be come up from EU and other countries. And also, it is important that we need to take a note that fact-finding mission have mentioned, we have to look. The solution for the Rohingya will not come from inside Burma. The solution will come from international community pressure. We can see something, this is a fast positive step. Of course, they will think twice now if they do any murder against Rohingya. This is what I believe. Not only Rohingya, other minorities in Burma. So that is important. And finally, what today, those who was mentioned already is clear. There is no willingness to accept the Rohingya as a citizen of Burma, as a Rohingya, as an she does not. I mentioned she didn't even mention our identity. So, as I mentioned earlier, my grandfather was in a picture here that I mentioned with her father. So they know everything. Let me tell you, they know everything. Our Rohingya community have contributed for the country for so long. Doctors, engineers, lawyers, many teachers. We just demanding restoring our full citizenship rights with dignity and with security. We want to live peacefully in our homeland, where we belong to. We have culture, we have civilization. Once we have recognized as an ethnic group, they strip of our citizens, denying our identity after stripping out our ethnic rights. From 1961 to 65, we have our Rohingya language broadcasting program is taken away. And 1982, the citizenship law they introduced, and then restriction of movement, denying all, denying our identity, denying our existence, denying the right, our citizenship, denying the right to have children, denying the right to have movement, denying the right to have education. These are all systematically a plan to wipe out our community in Burma. So, at the end, I want to say that we have high hope for all governments and international community, whoever supporting our cause. And again, I want to express many thanks to, firstly, Bangladesh. You have shown us humanity and hospitality and generosity, given us a shelter, 1 million Rohingya population. And it's much more important that to consider that Rohingya refugees, 60% are children, and without education, there is a community. We've been destroyed. That's why we are here. I would be in Arakan state today. I would be going to my paddy field, looking at, my grandfather's graves and others. I would be moving around in market of Butidao Mondo, That is where I belong to. Why? Because this proof that they destroy our community. We all are lucky one here today. Believe me. We all are very lucky people, a few. But 1 million over people in 600,000 Rohingyas in other countries, and 600,000 in Burma, Rakhine State, and Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Dubai, Bangladesh, Malaysia, and Indonesia, India, 35,000. So where will be our future? We really need your intellect, much more solidarity, much more a stronger practical action to protect the community. Otherwise, you will be finished at my time. Thank you very much.
Yes, Nina.
Thank you. I forgot to say this earlier. I'm very grateful that I'm actually here among so many, prestigious Rohingya activists who've been fighting for our cause for a long time, as well as happy that I actually get to witness the wheel of justice moving. Whether or not the provisional measures will be granted by the court, that's a different story, but having been inside the court and saw it all, I'm just overwhelmed. But the more overwhelming fact is that I get to be beside my sisters and brother from the camps. That's my utmost honor, to be beside them, the people who've just freshly come out of something so unheard of and inhumane as one can take. But they were so loving and kind. And when I said, I'm so happy to see you here, when I saw them for the first time, they said the same thing back. My community has so much love to give. They do. But are we willing to take it? Are you all willing to actually accept that they are, they're as human as you are, deserving of love and kindness and respect as human, just like anyone else? They just went through something so traumatic, but they were so strong inside the court. They were listening to all of those things. I mean, it was just 2 years ago that they lost everything. Would we be able to be that strong? I mean, I lost words to describe how powerful that moment was for me. And I really, truly hope that any sort of initiatives, and my colleagues have already, talked a lot about the need for support, for solidarity, not just at this moment. I know, partly it's because of the prominence of the case, because it has to do with Aung San Suu Kyi. Had she not been here, would you be here? Good question to ask, I think. I just hope that, our brothers and sisters at the camps and everywhere else who might not have the same opportunity, or who might not be able to travel around as much as we do, and don't have the access to the livelihood that we have, would be able to be the front and center of this, because they are. They're our agents. Their willingness to continue living despite all of the things that are trying to take them down is commendable. And I want us to acknowledge that a little bit more than we do now. Thank you.
The international community has responded very strongly to addressing the challenges of the refugees in the refugee camp. However, one has to be very practical that humanitarian aid can only address the symptoms of the challenges. We need to have a political solution, which is that first and foremost, the Rohingya people want to return to their homeland. However, this is not possible because the reality on the ground is very saddened because the Burmese government has no intention to receive us as citizens of Burma as Rohingyas. Therefore, I have following recommendation to the international community, to the diplomatic corps to follow up. Sorry for that.
It's okay. Also for the people who are watching us online, there is COMMENT from the Arakan Rohingya National Organization, whom we introduced at the beginning of this session.
As you know, the sad truth is that the Burmese government has no intention of creating conditions of sustainable return of refugees because they have already achieved their goal, the elimination of Rohingyas from our state. We therefore call upon the international community and other countries from the European Union, Bangladesh, or the member states that first increase the pressure on Burma and first and foremost its allies China, Russia, and India. Second, locally support Rohingya people's rights to legally recognize an ethnic minority in Burma as well as restoration of full citizenship consistent with other ethnic minorities of Burma and support the use of the name of our ethnic group as Rohingya. 3. Recognize the crimes perpetrated against Rohingyas, genocide and crimes against humanity as reported by UN fact-finding mission. 4. Request the international community to support the nation. The Myanmar government and its military agents are not only accountable in respect of the crimes they have been committed, but also in respect of the crimes they should have prevented crime. The war needs to show that it's not ready to tolerate such genocides and other much atrocious crimes. And last point is that we increase the support for the refugee camps in Bangladesh during desperate need for education, security, and proper health care and other humanitarian assistance. And finally, I heartfully thank the government of Bangladesh and government of Gambia, OIC, Canada, Netherlands. I also thank my government in the country that I like, Australia. Australia is also doing a lot of things. Australian Foreign Minister Bob Carr was the first and foreign minister to visit the refugees in 2013. And his actions also followed by the subsequent foreign minister Marie Spain and Julie Bishop. They have repeatedly visited Bangladesh refugee camps, and on top of that, I was in refugee camp in 2018 with my good friend Philip Roder. Mr. Tables was there. We had a conference there. And Australians also came to contribute to the best of their ability, and they also have a like-minded policy to cooperate with the country like Canada and Netherlands for Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And for the final word of this round, Wai Wai from the Women's Peace Network.
Thank you very much. I just want to echo all the calls from our brothers and sisters and from the entire Rohingya community. I also want to acknowledge there are many Rohingya activists and leaders here, and all of us. I would like to thanks to all of us to tirelessly, put in our effort as much as we can to end this. I would like to congratulate and thanks to all Rohingya brothers and sisters. And I also like to thank that the Burmese people, as Dr. Manzani has said, good Burmese people, and Burmese people, ethnic minorities who have shown support and solidarity to us, who have joined our journey for justice and peace in Burma. And I also want to reiterate again that I have we all have a deep gratitude and thanks to all of you non-governmental organizations and governments who has shown their leaderships and support for all of us. I just also want to say that while we are having these legal processes, there is no questions that we can ask. There is actually the atrocity has occurred and it's continued to occur. So we actually cannot wait for the legal determination to act. We need to act now to end ongoing atrocity crimes in Burma, in Rakhine State. We need to end government to force in the Rohingya to issue this national verification card, which is actually continuing their genocidal policy to really legalize Rohingya as non-citizens. We need to ask the government to continue criminalize movement of the Rohingya people in Rakhine State. Rohingya who are confined in Rakhine State, who try to escape from the country, from Rakhine State, they've been criminalized and sentenced to 2 years. Recently, over 100 people, like last week, were in prison for trying to escape from the ghettos. We need to urge Burmese government to show sincere effort for the repatriations by showing their by promising the Rohingyas that they will have a return to their places of origin, their villages. They will restore the equal rights in Burma. They will provide the full citizenship in Burma, and they will provide a safety and security like all other Burmese in Burma. And we need to call for the actions, and we need to call for the support for all to end the ongoing genocide. Thank you very much.
If we can take advantage of the fact that we are live thanks to Deutsche Welle, and which we know is being watched in the camps, would you like to have a comment for your brothers and sisters? Very briefly, with those of them who are watching us.
Yeah, I think this is very important. Whenever we talk about Rohingya issue, Rohingya representation is very, very important. Rohingya participation is always should be there. We are representing our people who are in our Arakan state, 600,000, and Bangladesh and other countries. What we are discussing about, talking about their issue. So that's why it is important that we should speak something. Our message passing to them is very essential in my understanding. So thank you very much giving a chance. So our Rohingya by Envoy and Zantara Kamot Aso Zantara Diki Burma Tashar Budra Begunara Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So Onra Huzaro Hota Gota Halia Arab to Fulia first day here in Erediki Gambia ye Sundarburi Onora Ze Dukokol Fayo Onora Zezulumokol Guji to Onora Zeduniki Dunia to Gie the honorary Rekamo Manushin Buzayo, E. Beguloriki Gambia lawyer, Aratu Bishibala lawyer, Timuguase, Foli Hopuli, Palaguri, Buzai. To Adjadiki Burma site of two Shaulisha, the Shaulisha of the Mani Tara Amata respond Tarawwa Uzan Tara Wabes Tara Yan Mani Inso here Tara that for Ya or the Dindilla system with Tara Indiki. So Adiki, Indiki, both problem Uzurio, Indiki Tara Musulman problem, Adiki, Indiki historical, Tamayom, both Bosor, Salish duality in face of the Komiva problem. Ikatika, Hoifara Lambano, where the Taratu Mani Pichase, তো এই বেশাবেশি তারা অদতে জেন্ডুন দিকে ডিনাই করি গিয়ে মিশা হতা যেদুর হই পারে ই নদতে সুন্দর গুড়ি বালা গুড়ি কোর্টের মাঝে হয়ে গিয়ে তো মন্থর আর একটু বুঝা ফুরব দে আর কোর্ট কেস আজ দেখি শুরু আকাল হিস্টোরির মাঝে আর হই মান অহনের ফার্স্ট টাইম আর রোহিঙ্গা অকল বেশাবেশি দুঃখ পাই বেশাবেশি জুলুম পাই মন্তরাজ্যা ফার্স্ট টাইম আর বর্মার তু কোর্টত আয়ের একটা ডিফেন্ড করা পড়ে তো ইয়ান একটা আর ইজ্জত আর ডিগনিটি আর কম আর দেশত আর হক লই আর হলো আজ্ঞা আর তু জায়গা আছে আর তু মেডি আছে আর তু জুবান আছে আর তু কালচার আছে আর ইনসান আর ফদ্দাদা বেগুলুন আজ্ঞা আর কারণ মাঝে আর তু বেগুলু জায়গা জমি লিন্দিলা ছিলাম তো কম আর হলো হমন তো ইয়াতাল্লা বলি আর কোমলা বলি ইয়ান একটা ইনসাফ আজ্ঞান আর একটা বেগুনাল্লাহ ইজ্জত ইয়ান বুঝা ফুরব তো কোর্টের কেস আর আরো বহুত কিছু চলের বন্তর ইন দিকি জেন্দিল্লা চলিব চলুক ইনৰ দিকে লম্বা টাইম যা জেন্দি লইব মন্ত্র আরাতু মনটু আর হক পাইবাল্লা দুনিয়ার গভর্নমেন্ট কলরি আরাতু প্রেসার দি যাইউ আর দেখি এরে আর রোহিঙ্গা বাই আইন বই না বেশা বেশি এসে বেগুনে দেখি ইনশাআল্লাহ অনরাল্লাহ বলি যে জান্নাত পারে এনা তো হাম করি যান গভর্নমেন্ট কলে বেশা বেশি আছে আর ফাতি তো অনরাতু ইনশাআল্লাহ দিল মনসরা বানানো করব আর হক আর ইনশাআল্লাহ ফাইম বেগুনের আসসালামু আলাইকুম ওয়া রাহমাতুল্লাহি ওয়া বারাকাতুহু Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Ar Rohingya bhai bonen kol. Tora are sino jano. Aje tora laburi ara mane ki ha dunia mane darbadaro gi goi tora bisa saiballa. Bisa je jinisan yen aste diroibo. Tora hosla rakho. Inshallah ara মানে আরা হক লইয়ার আরা দেশে যাই ফাইছু আর কোন হতা ইয়া মনে গইছো তোরা ফদ দেশত আসো আরে ইয়ান তোরা দেশ ন তোরা গর্ব হই আসো গর্বদল গুলি থাকিবা আর তোরারে বাংলাদেশের হারে জায়গা দিয়ে তো অন্য হনি কে না দে হেই গায়রাত হনিকা তো ন আছি নই বহনো দিন সো এই বাংলাদেশের ইজ্জত গান একখানা রাখো তোরা কিনি মনে মধ্যে হসলা কো আর ইনশাআল্লাহ তোরা হক পাইবা আসসালামু আলাইকুম
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Atu beshi izzatoye ento alfa jidayan toy arar pai boin monarlakyo toara insan toare homno Eduli.
Assalamualaikum. Dunia maze hoti masuk dinsen rajyan take and dino tadi. Yes, aralai right. Arab semua suatu maze. To anak tina kana ibu. ICJ, ICC, ida dino tak. ICJ inshallah to be strong case as it ora hello to. ICC maze yo al parallel case sole. Hedio dini ke aral zulum din goche. Hin ha mahai hin on tara shasti paibo. তো প্লাস ইনশাআল্লাহ একদিনও তোরা গরম হাত হিফাজতের সাথে ইজ্জতের সাথে যাইবার চান্স হবো দুনিয়ার মাঝে প্রতি জুলুম শুরু কিন্তু আমার এইবার খতম বা খতম বললা বদিল্লা রাস্তাকল আছে দুনিয়ার মাঝে কিন্তু তোরা তুই ইতিহাসের সব বদিল্লাগুলি সব গুছিতে আছে তো আল্লাহ বেকুন্তর হাত দোয়া কবুল করে মুসলিম মাসেও দোয়া কবুল করে তো আমার বলছে তোরা নিজের হেফাজত হয়ে মাগিবা 2 নম্বর আর মুসলমান দেশ দিদুন আলাদা হেল্প করছে স্পেশালি বাংলাদেশ আলাদা জায়গা দিয়ে ঠিক আছে আমরা তাই কি হইতেছে আই দুনিয়ার মাঝে স্টুডেন্ট ঘটনা বুঝিয়ে আই হাই স্কুলের দেশত হচ্ছি প্রাইমারি স্কুলের দেশত হচ্ছি ব্যাচেলার্স ডিগ্রি দেশত লই মাস্টার্স ডিগ্রি দিদি আই হলো বিশ্ব অঙ্গন আপনি দেশ নাই দিয়ে তাহলে একদিন তোরা দেশ দিলে তোরা তুইও সুন্দর ঘটনা উঠে পারিবা মানুষ হয়ে পারিবা আই হ্যাভ টু সে আসসালামু আলাইকুম
I just want to say that we are here because of you, because our community has been very resistant and refused to accept any lesser human rights or human being. We have been persecuted for long, and we refuse to accept any lesser rights, and we refuse to accept discriminations. We have known our rights, and we are stick to our rights, and we always wanted to be full and equal citizens and human beings like others. And our resistance, our hearts and our morals give us the strength, and now we're here. So I just want to congratulate all of you, our community, and you are the most strongest one. So aktu hoyto mohodde ara jare in the hit ara sukorore ara la hota hoyer ara ziban faibolla ere dunia ra bere boro khotom mare ara discuss kori farid dei an khella hoile toara la boli ara khom me ara agelo ta bikurun sinde ara hamma hoti ara sini ara tu hoddur hoka sidi an ara sini ara hokal la boli ara zindagi ba boite ki baade ara hokal la boli bormai ara re या बनाते चाहिए सेकंड क्लास बनाते चाहिए थर्ड क्लास बनाते चाहिए आरा रे फुराई फलाइते चाहिए आरा या नरे आरा एक्सेप्ट न गरी बादे आरा हकल आरा जलता आरा हकल लागली आरा मुखाबला गरी राखी एत लाबुली आरा या हक आरा फायुंदे आरा बिसान आरा फायुंदे एत लाबुली तो आरा तू दिन मनशाला गरानो फुरिब आरा हन्ना दे नारा सिनी तोरा हकल लाबली तोरा थियायो यान बात होत मोहर शुक्रिया अस्सलाम वालेकुम